Hey everyone, welcome to day 2 of 3 of HTXO Talks Hiking. Today we're here because earlier this week we asked you what's holding you back from going hiking in Houston. And many of you chimed in about the top reasons that hold you back from hiking in Houston. And so we wanted to spend this week addressing those top reasons. Yesterday we talked about resetting expectations for what to expect when you're in Houston, when you're hiking in Houston. Houston has a lot of transplants, so there's a lot of people who have come from other areas that actually have mountains. And while Houston has a great outdoor scene, we don't have mountains like you would expect to see in Denver. And so yesterday we talked about what to expect from Houston and how to take advantage of what Houston has to offer. If you missed yesterday's video, you can find it in the video section of the HTXoutdoors Facebook group, and you can watch the replay. So today we want to help you get oriented when you're thinking about hiking, because the next topic that everybody said they were concerned about was which way to go, how do they find the trailhead, and making sure that they don't get lost. By the way, have I told you guys the story about how I got lost on a trail that you absolutely couldn't get lost on? It was I couldn't believe it even happened. Basically, it was this really easy trail. We were doing a loop. And what happened was I was looking down because it had recently rained and I wanted to make sure that I was watching my step. Next thing I knew, I looked up and I didn't see any of the trail markers, which we're going to get into what a trail marker is in a few minutes. And so I pulled up my reliable Google Maps. Luckily, we had reception, and realized that I was in the middle of two trails. And so all I did was turn, and about 5 minutes later, we were back on the trail. So it can happen, but what we want to do today is give you some tips so that you make sure that you don't get lost, even on the trails that are impossible to get lost on. So let's start with a few different hikes that you can go on. The first is a Thru-Hike. A Thru-Hike is where you start at one point and you end at another point. One of the most popular Thru-Hikes is the Appalachian Trail. Now, of course, you're going to be backpacking on this because it's about 2,181 miles. It goes from Georgia to Maine, but basically, and not all Thru-Hikes have to be that long. It could be a 3-mile Thru-Hike. The point of a Thru-Hike is that you're starting at location A and you're ending at location B, which means that you need to arrange cars. So typically, if you have multiple hikers, you can have one person, you can drive to the end of the trail, leave one of your cars at the end, and then drive everybody to the beginning of the trail so that when you're done with your hike, you have a car at the end, which can bring you back to get the car that's at the beginning. If you don't have multiple cars, or if you're going by yourself, depending on how long the hike is, sometimes some hikes have shuttle services where you can park at the end and then they'll shuttle you to the beginning so that you can arrive at the end at any point in time and your car is there. Or if you're close enough, you could even Uber if you're by yourself. The very first time I did a Thru-Hike, it was a 3-day backpacking trip, and we were leaving my car at the end of the trail so that by the time we got to the end, we can bring the drivers back to the beginning of the trail. Well, I clearly didn't understand the concept of the Thru-Hike at this point yet, because we got back to the beginning of the trail and I thought, oh, I don't want to lose my keys on the trail, so I'm going to leave them in the car at the beginning of the trail. It wasn't until 2 days into the hike, we were more than halfway done with it, that I realized, oh, we're hiking to my car at the end and I don't have my keys. Luckily, it was okay because we had 2 cars at the end, so it wasn't a big deal. The other car brought all the drivers back to the beginning. But when you're doing a Thru-Hike, the logistics of the hike are super important. So you want to plan out where your cars are going to be and make sure you have keys in the proper locations for those cars. The next type of hike is an out and back hike. This is where you start at one point, you hike for whatever mileage half of the mileage that you were expecting to hike, and then you turn around and go to the beginning. Now, I say half the mileage because you don't want to hike until you get tired on an out and back. And this is a big mistake that a lot of people make. They hike until they get tired, and then they say, okay, I'm going to go home. I'm going to go home now. But at the point when you turn around, that's your halfway point. So you don't want to wait until you get tired before you turn around. What you want to do is you want to say, how many miles do you want to hike that particular day? It could be 5 miles, 3 miles, 10 miles, any length of time that you want. Just keep an eye on some kind of GPS tracker. And when you get to the halfway point of the mileage you want to do that day, you turn around and you go back. Now, out and backs aren't the most exciting for me because you're seeing the same trail on the way back that you saw on the way out. However, when you go in the opposite direction, and it's also now a different time of the day, sometimes the same points of the trail, you get a different viewpoint from it. And so you can get a little bit different perspective. But for the most part, I prefer a through hike or a loop. Now, a loop is where you start at one point and you're also going to end at that same point. So you don't have to worry about car management. With an out and back, you don't have to worry about car management either because you're starting and stopping at the same point. But with a loop, the trail will either naturally be a loop, so you can stay on one trail and you just see different things the entire time, or you can piece two trails together. So you go out on one trail, then maybe you turn and you piece a couple together and you make a complete loop and you end up back where you started from. So these are the three main types of hiking that you're going to hear about when you start looking at hikes. The next thing I want to talk about is how to read a trail map. This particular map is section 1 of the Lone Star Trail, which is a through hike that's about 98 miles or so, and it's just north of Houston. When you first look at a trail map, it can look really intimidating, but we're going to go through and we're going to break it down so that you know how to read it. And also, I want to take a second here and just make sure if you guys have any questions to write them in the chat, in the comment section or the chat box. And at the end of the presentation, I'm going to take a look and see if there's any questions and address them. Okay, every trail map is going to have a legend on it. The legend is going to tell you what all the different symbols mean on that map. But a lot of the trail maps, they use similar symbols and similar coding so that it makes it easier to read various park maps. So the trail on the map is typically a dotted line and roads are typically solid. Now there could be lots of other things that are on the map that we're going to talk about here, but those are the two main important ones. Your trails are the dotted lines. Now when a park has multiple trails, a lot of times they'll color code the trails. So I'm going to try to highlight some stuff here for you guys. So when you look at this map, the Lone Star Hiking Trail, which is the LSHT on this map, let me get it to a point where you can see through my circle. It's marked in the black dotted line. So this is the black dotted line that goes along this map. If you can see my line being drawn, this is the Lone Star Trail. Now, there are other trails on this map. There is the Little Lake Creek Loop Trail that's highlighted in orange. And so now my pointer is going and highlighting this section of the trail. But each trail on the map is a dotted line, whereas the roads on the trail are the solid line. The next thing that you want to look at is the mileage. So when you're planning out your hike, each trail map and each trail, they list the mileage. So there's a couple things that you want to look for. The black arrows that are on the map, I'm putting black circles around the arrows, is the start and the stop point. And the number that's in the square along the trail in between the 2 mile points is the distance between those points. So from point, I'm going to make an A to point B on this map. It's 3.2 miles, and it might be a little bit hard to read on this map, but when you zoom in, you'll be able to see it. So let's do a different example. We're going to look at point A, which is at the parking lot, and we're going to go to point B over here, but this time we're going to take the Little Lake Creek Road, the Little Lake Creek Loop Trail, and the distance on the map, the numbers that are on the actual trail is 3.06. So that means from point A to point B, when you follow the orange trail, is 3.06 miles. In the first example that we looked at, we had point A and point B on the Lone Star Trail. You'll notice that there is a P at each one of these intersections. That P means that that there's a parking lot. So the P means that there's a parking lot. So you can do any of the different types of hikes that we talked about. If you just wanted to hike 3.2 miles, you could start in parking lot. You can start in the first parking lot, which we're calling A, and you can finish at the second parking lot, which is B. If you wanted to just do a through hike, though, you would want to make sure you either have a car at point B or you have somebody to pick you up to take you back to point A, because your car is going to be at point A. But you can also, on this particular trail, you can do a loop. You can make a loop. So you can start at the same trailhead, the parking lot, which we're calling, point A. And then you can take the Lone Star Trail all the way for 3.2 miles till you get to where the trail turns. Then you're going to take this West Fork Trail for 0.3 miles. It says right here. And then you're going to turn again onto Little Lake Creek Loop and follow the Orange Trail back to the trailhead. This is going to give you a total of, if you look at the map and you count the mileage, 3.2 plus 0.3 plus 3.6. And I marked over the 3, but I've seen it a lot. So we're going to get about, so 3.2, 3.7, about 6.8 miles if we did this loop. It's a little bit messy, but that is how you're going to look at a map. And basically, the first thing you want to do is determine how much mileage do you think that you can do in one outing. And if you're out for a day hike, you want to make sure that you're getting back to the trailhead before it gets dark, or that you're prepared to hike in the dark. So you're going to look at your start time. You're going to look at how many miles you think you can go. I always plan for 30-minute miles. Now, I can walk, usually I can hike a mile anywhere between 17 minutes and 25 minutes. It depends on if the hike is flat, if there's a lot of hills on it, what the weather conditions are, how hot it is. If it's really hot outside, I'm going to walk a little bit slower. If it's cold and flat, I might walk a lot faster. But in general, if I'm just hiking and I'm not carrying a lot of weight, I can usually count on 30-minute miles, and that includes breaks. So I would say for a 7-mile hike, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say 7 miles. I'm going to say times 30 minutes. And that's going to equal 3.5 hours. Now I'm probably going to round this up as well. So I'm going to say I need, just because I want to be on the safe side, I'm going to say I need 4 hours to do this hike. So when I'm thinking about my start time, I want to make sure that 4 hours after my start time, it's still going to be light outside and I'm going to have the same weather conditions that I would have, that I want when I'm hiking. Now, obviously I probably am going to walk a little bit faster than this. I gave myself a lot of buffer time, but it's better to be safe than sorry. You don't want to say, oh, I can do this in 20-minute miles times, 7 miles. I'm going to be back, whatever that math is. Sorry, I didn't do it ahead of time. But you don't want to plan for 2 hours and then it take you 4 hours, because then you didn't necessarily look at what conditions those extra 2 hours are taking you. So I'm going to clear this really quick. And just when you're looking at the map, again, you're looking at all the different mileage. So I showed you a loop, but you could continue down any of these paths and you can keep going. And then just, you want to make sure that you're looking for the different arrows. And then you're checking for what mileage is in between each arrow. So between this arrow and between arrow A that I marked and arrow B that I marked, there's 0.7 miles. But from start to finish, you're going to add all of these different points up. And every map is going to be the same. And then you just want to make sure that wherever you're stopping, that there's a parking lot, so that you can either leave a car or get picked up, or you're working your way back to your original parking lot. Okay. So when you're hiking on these trails, so now that you know how far you're going and which trails you want to go on, how do you know that you're still on the trail that you started? Most parks have trail markers somewhere on the trail. So you can see right here where I circled in black, there is a silver or gray, whatever you want to call it, marker on the actual tree. So as you're hiking on this particular trail, you know to look for this marker. If you're changing trails, so let me go back for a second. So the silver marker is on the Lone Star Trail, but then when we turned and we got onto the Little Lake Creek Loop, which is the orange one, the color markers on the tree also change to orange, so that you know that you're on a different trail than when you started. So if you intended to be on that trail, you can still be on it. And if you didn't, you can figure out where you are and get back to the one that you were at. Okay. So that's pretty much the very basics of how you're going to read a trail map and how you're going to figure out if you're on the right trail. So before you go hiking, you want to always tell somebody where you're going, because especially if you're hiking by yourself. If you're hiking by yourself, just text somebody, post it on Facebook, because if something does happen, then somebody knows at least one point where you were before you got lost. Check the map and know where your car is parked. You want to kind of have a general idea of what direction, north, east, west, south, you're walking in relation to your car, so that if you do get lost and you run into people, know what the parking lot name is, know what the name of what trail you were intending to hike, so that they can help you get back to where you started. And then some items that you want to make sure that you're bringing with you on hikes. You want to bring water. It's recommended that you drink 2 liters of water a day. Now, how much water you bring on your hike? I always bring 3 liters of water, because my Camelback, my hydration pack that I bring, has a 3-liter bladder. So I always fill it up before I go on a hike, regardless of how long it is, because I'd rather have too much water than not enough. The worst thing is to run out of water, especially on a hot day. And in Houston, a lot of times it's hot. So you want to make sure you have enough water. You want to wear sturdy shoes. You want to take a look at what the terrain is like on the trail that you're going to be hiking and wear clothing that is appropriate for that hike. You want to bring sun protection. So whether that is sunscreen or long sleeve clothes or a hat, you want to bring that with you to protect yourself from the sun and prevent heat stroke. And then you want to bring some kind of bug spray. Mosquitoes love me. So when I look at bug spray, there's two main bug sprays that I use. There's one organic one called Green Goo by Bugs Be Gone, and I'll go back and link this into the comment section afterwards so that you can find it. It's organic. I use it for everyday use in low bug environments because mosquitoes love me. So if I went to a heavily infested area, it's not going to work as well for me. It may work for other people, but if I'm in a heavily infested area or I know that there's a high chance of ticks being present, I'm going to use Deep Woods by Off, and I'll link that in the notes as well. Now, Deep Woods does contain DEET, so that's going to be up to you. You want to do your research on the different types of bug sprays that are out there. Some clothes are actually bug repellent as well. So when you're looking at the clothing that you're buying for hiking, just take a look and see some clothing has SPF in it, and then other clothing has bug prevention in it as well. I try to always bring a snack, just especially if you're on a longer hike, or let's say you do end up taking a longer route than you expected. You always want to have a snack so you can have a little bit of energy. And then last but not least, some kind of first aid kit. And what you put in your first aid kit will depend on the type of hike that you're doing and the distance that you're going. But you always want to make sure you have basic first aid. I think that includes, alcohol pads, Band-Aids, some kind of Band-Aid or wrap, some kind of gauze, gloves, because even on simple hikes, if you have to mess with wounds, you want to keep gloves on. And I always keep ibuprofen and Benadryl, and then also a compass and a knife. That's what I keep in my basic first aid kit. So that is today's topic on HTXO Talks Hiking and how to have a little bit more knowledge before you get to the trails so that you don't get lost. And if you guys are interested, we want to invite you to our full moon hike that is this week. Before I give you the details really quick, coming up tomorrow, we are going to talk about where to go hiking in and around Houston and who to go with. So if you're interested in joining us on our full moon hike, which is on Thursday at 6:30 p.m., go to HTXoutdoors.com/hiking. That's HTXoutdoors.com/hiking. We have a link there that you can click to RSVP for our full moon hike that's this Thursday. And we also have other hiking information. Some of our blog posts are out there, and after tomorrow, we're going to upload all of these videos and the slides so that you can download everything and have everything all in one place at HTXoutdoors.com/hiking. I am going to check the chat box really quick. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box in the comment section. I'm going to see if we have any so far before I let you guys go today. Okay, what app would I suggest for trail mapping / mileage? There's a couple different. Google Maps a lot of times has trails on it so that you can see where you are on the trail. That is how, when I got off trail, I was able to see exactly where I was. Now, not all trails are on the Google Maps. You can download off maps from, I think it's called maps.me. You can download some off maps. And so beforehand, before you head out, you can check the map to see if your specific trails that you plan to hike are on it. And then that way you have an offline map ready to go. As a beginner, a lot of times what I do is I use Map My Run, the app called Map My Run. And then that way, and I start the tracker when I start my hike. So if I do get lost or turned around, you can always see where you already walked. So let's say you were planning to do a loop originally, but maybe you missed a turn or you got off track. You can just look at the Map My Run app. You can turn around and you just try to follow the red line that it marked that you already walked. You try to follow it back to your parking lot. And for mileage mapping, I used the trail maps that we talked about on our earlier slide. Most parks have trail maps. So you just go to the park that you're looking to do a hike in, download the trail map, and then you can figure out the mileage for those hikes. Okay, so that's it for today. Tomorrow, tune in because we are going to go into more detail about where to go hiking, some of our favorite places in and close to Houston. See you tomorrow.